Frickin' Tony Robbins standing out here. I have the easiest job in the room, which is I get to poach from all the good work done by all the great journalists in this state and pick the most bizarre and twisted and corrupt stuff and write about it, and have no repercussions other than ruining Rick Scott's day occasionally if someone reads him the column. This is an incredible time we live in. Government is basically shutting us out, and by us I'm not talking about journalists. We're all citizens here. I mean, I first of all consider myself just a citizen of Florida, and my kids and my grandkids, everything. You think about what this state is becoming for them, and that's what it is, being pissed off. That's exactly what it is. I'm pissed off all the time. I get pissed off every day reading. I read a lot of the state newspapers every day. I read the New York Times and sometimes the Washington Post. And there's nothing that energizes writing like anger and outrage, and a sense that you're speaking for someone who isn't being spoken for. We're trying to get the simplest records from a chief executive of a state that traditionally is actually famous for its sunshine laws, government in the sunshine, open government, and it's being systematically shut down or ignored. I see these, I mean, you know, it's just, well, anyway, it's incredible. Someone was talking to me. First of all, there's a couple of great people in here I've got to mention. The first fellow I saw when I walked in was Bob Shaw, who is, I know, familiar here in Orlando, but I knew him as one of the best reporters who ever set foot in Tallahassee. The guy kicked ass. I was a young reporter with the paper. It was just amazing, the stuff. And I wished for those early 9 or 10 years at the Herald that I'd been writing a column just so I could steal Bob's stuff, too. Mary Ellen Kloss, who's now doing that stuff up in town. I mean, these are people, as a columnist, you rely on because you don't have the time on deadline or anything else to go and do this work. The other thing is, because of the books and other stuff, it's impossible for me to walk into a government building and ask for a document now and tell them my name, because it just, nothing is ever going to be delivered to me. And so you rely on the people that are out there doing the hard work. It's phenomenal. I think Dave Wilson was telling me there are 1,100 exceptions to the public records laws in the state that have been passed, I guess, in the last few years and this legislature is just going to get worse and worse and worse. So the fight is a legal fight. I think it's also a fight of publicizing what's happening and getting readers and getting citizens to understand that they're being locked out of their own government. This is a great deal that this guy's got, by the way. He says, I'm going to get elected and I'm going to use my own jet because I don't want to burn the state's money flying, you know, in the governor's jet. I'm going to use my own jet. Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to tell you where I'm going. He thinks he's like James Bond, this guy. He flies, you know, so he wants to go to Texas and shoot deer on a ranch that Big Sugar has an interest in. He thinks he can do that, and he almost did get away with that. But this is an incredible thing where his day is basically what he tells you it is. You rely on his account of where he was and who he saw that day. And God knows who he's really meeting with, but the point is, he got this little exception because he said, this is for security reasons, since it's my plane. I don't think anybody has a right to know where I'm going in my plane, even though I'm doing state business in that plane. And that's him. He's the James Bond governor. But there's no sense of outrage when you write about that. The only thing you know is if there's a Wawa opening in your neighborhood anytime soon, that clown is going to be there. He will be there to open that up. We had a case down in, I think it was Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, where one of these biotech companies that the state had given millions and millions of dollars of tax credits to come and set up. They folded up and laid off 1,600 people, and I just said in the column, where's Rick? I mean, we need to offset all, you know, why isn't he there when they're shutting down these places that he wants to give more money to? The legislature itself is another animal, and I don't have an answer for that because I just sit there and sort of swing away at them, and sometimes, you know, sometimes you get them a little angry or sometimes you get them a little upset, but they keep doing what they're doing, and I don't have the answer for how to get them to stop because there doesn't seem to be, as I said, any sense of outrage or anger, except among us here in this room. And I do think that people would get upset. Now, here's the question: will it translate to votes? Is it something they can? The only thing that's going to get these people's attention is the threat of losing their jobs. And the only way they're going to lose their jobs is if the voters in their home districts say, you know what, we don't want this secrecy, or we don't want all these shenanigans. And the only way to get the information to the voters is through the media. And now the social media. Twitter is pretty effective at chasing these people around. And a good example is Trump spends far more time on Twitter, Donald Trump does, than he does really even talking to the media. And he talks a lot to the media, but he pounds out the Twitter feeds. And he's got, of course, like Kardashian numbers, the people that follow this guy. And I don't know how to, my question is, how do we translate that into a way that you take a bit of information like, I think Dave was telling me the latest thing they want to do, or if they haven't done, is to create an exception in the public records law that they can conceal the identities of witnesses in felony cases. Now, I want you to think about this. Conceal the identity of witnesses in felony cases. Now, this opens so many horrible, horrible doors for the justice system. I mean, basically anybody can charge anybody with a crime and be shielded from scrutiny. That's the sort of thing that if you can dramatize, how do you get that to people and make them understand how disastrous that is for a democracy? I mean, that's sort of our job, is to not just get the doors open, but to tell people why are we raising such hell about this? You know, this is something they do understand, is this $1.3 million. They get that this great conservative governor with this great conservative, fiscally conservative legislature. I wrote, again, the only way this would have ever gotten out is because, well, it did get out, but it's because you had to actually go to court and do it. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, spent the taxpayers' money of this state filing his lawsuit and engaging against the EPA for cleaning up Chesapeake Bay. Chesapeake Bay. And the majority of people in Maryland are hugely supportive of this measure to get clean water. But she, representing the agricultural interests and other people in Florida, felt it was a lousy precedent. So she spent a lot of taxpayers, and she is spending a lot, to fight a lawsuit to clean up the water for the people of Chesapeake Bay. Now, I tell you an interesting exchange. I wrote about this, and I said, and I put Governor Scott in the column, and I said, you know, this is what's happening under Pam Bondi and Governor Scott, this kind of, you know, incredible waste of money. Well, Scott's office actually calls me. This was a big mistake. They had somebody call me, and she seemed to be young, and she said, listen, we want a retraction from you. I said, uh-huh. What do you see? She says, well, this wasn't Governor Scott's idea. You won't see any trail to Governor Scott on this, is what she's telling me. I said, so you telling me the Attorney General of his administration filed a lawsuit on behalf of the state of Florida and the governor up in Maryland, entered a lawsuit without his knowledge? I said, because that would mean he's not paying attention, and that would be the most astonishing thing. He would be the first governor in history not to be aware what his Attorney General was doing. And she paused, and I said, here's the other thing. Does he support the lawsuit? Does he support the intervention? Well, he never said he did. I said, that's not the issue. Does he support it? Could you ask him and get back to me? And she never called me back. And but she said, I'll tell you what I'll do. When you talk to the governor and get his explanation for why this happened, I will write about it. And I'll give you a whole column. It won't just be a whole column. I'll write about it again. No, and I never, I said, I'm happy to do that. I'll never do it. But the idea being that they thought the people of Florida were so stupid that nobody was going to notice that they were going up and jumping in on this case in Maryland. So, yeah, you shine a light. They're like cockroaches, I swear to God. You know, you get them with a little bit of light and they scoot out of range, and then they creep out again, and you just got to keep shining the light, which is what we do, or we try to do, or should try to do. How do you do that without public records? Can you imagine if the state court system, without identifying, where a criminal affidavit was filed with witnesses' names blocked out? Think about that. It's just outrageous in the 21st century in a modern democracy to even be thinking about this. But this is what's going on up there, and they have the votes to do it, is the scary part. So I don't have an answer, except that just, I hope you're as pissed off as I am about it. And luckily, here's a good thing. There's some terrific lawyers and law firms who get involved in this stuff. And you want to ruin their day, drag them to court. That ruins their day. Even though they're spending taxpayers' money defending these horrible, horrible ideas, once they're in court, everything changes. I'll give you Amendment 1 is happening right now. And Earth Justice has filed a big lawsuit. Somebody else just jumped in the other day with the lawsuit. And I love the lawmakers who stole this money, the Amendment 1 money. Embezzled it was my term, but I just think it's just thievery and just started plugging it in elsewhere. They're upset because they're saying, now this is a great waste of taxpayers' money. This is incredible. I mean, it is really is like a Saturday Night Live routine. They steal money, and then when you catch them and try to make them put it back, they're saying you're wasting the taxpayers' money. Why? The only waste is that they're going to hire a bunch of lawyers at $500 an hour to go fight the citizens who want the information they deserve to have. That's the real crime of this thing. So I'm all for dragging him to court. What's what happened with the redistricting plan? I mean, these knuckleheads, how long were they up there? How much did they spend over, someone said $11 million? $11 million to draw new districts, and none of them could agree on it. And this is the great conservative movement, the great fiscally conservative movement in Tallahassee. They will piss away every dollar that you give them, and you got to bust them on it. And my job would suck if it weren't for the public record. I can't tell you how many times I've felt so lucky to live in Florida and be able to just get records that we should be able to get, whether it's a police report, whether it's a file. Years and years ago, many, many years ago, I did a series when I was on the investigations team at the Herald about bad doctors in the state of Florida. And there were some really bad doctors that had done some horrible things and had been allowed to keep practicing, keep operating on people. And we went up to Tallahassee. I was with Gene Miller and Bill Montalbano. We went up to Tallahassee, and we walked into this office, and we said we would like the files on these folks. And, you know, they looked at us like we were from Mars. They had never, no one had ever asked. They didn't know whether they were allowed, and I guess they got with their lawyers, and the lawyers said, well, it's a public record, you've got to give it to them. And so we came back with boxes and boxes of files. I don't know what would have happened to that series if they would have said, oh no, by the way, we're going to charge you $1,000 a page to copy it. It didn't exist then. They had to, you know, we said, we'll go copy them. And they put us in a room and they had somebody sort of watching us. But regardless, there wasn't any issue about let's make it as difficult as possible. They just sort of looked at each other and shrugged and said, why would you want to look at these? And then we just said, trust us. We just want to look at them a little bit. And we took the files. But I'm not sure it would be so easy now. I don't know, but I have a feeling we would find battles at every single stage and not very much support for opening that stuff up. The result of a series like that is that some bad guys aren't hurting people anymore in the state of Florida. Their shingles are not out. They're not mutilating people. They're not molesting their patients. And so the whole point is to protect these people, our readers, their citizens. That's sort of our mission. And if you take away the records and you conceal all this stuff, bad things happen to people. I mean, there's one area of hope. I think when I was young, I was just getting out of school when Watergate was happening and all the President's Men was out. And it was a very idealistic time to go into journalism back in '74. Very, very cool time. I mean, it was like a hip thing. We're going to go kick ass. We're going to be Woodward and Bernstein. And there's a little bit of a resurgence of that right now. The movie Spotlight, which is coming out, which is about the Boston Globe series on the archdiocese up there and on the scandal within the Catholic Church. From what I hear, is really a terrific film. And it also, I don't want to say lionizes journalism, it also makes journalism seem relevant to the audience again. It makes them seem like, oh, this is how we got that information. This bunch of folks, these reporters, had to do this, and these editors had to be brave and make these decisions, and you're up against a tremendously powerful institution in Boston, the Catholic Church. I mean, all that had to happen. It's very much a Watergate kind of story, yet all of it, I mean, from my reaction and reading the early reviews and a lot of what's been the public reaction to what the movie is that, hey, wow, we didn't know this is what it took to get this information out. And that's what we do, and it's not supposed to be glorious, and it's not supposed to be, we're not heroes, we're just stand-ins for the people. You know, every community, every street you drive, all these people need the information. And if these guys, like this, had their way, very, very little of it would get out. I wish I were a lawyer and I had some answers as to how to make them stop, or how to, but I mean, I think you just all get out there and fight and kick and scream, raise hell, and stay pissed off. It'd be, you know, that's all we can really do. I've been doing it a long time. I have no idea, I'm not idealistic about any column I write. I don't know that it makes a goddamn bit of difference in the world, to be honest with you. I don't know that. But I know that you can't live with yourself for not trying and not believing that if one person's life changes. I was telling someone back in the room, I got a call, there was a terrific series that the Tampa paper did and the Sarasota paper did on mental health, the state mental health institutions, and this incredible veil of secrecy when people die in there. And they invoke the HIPAA laws and say, well, it's a patient's privacy. We can't tell you any information. They tell this to the families. And when there's a criminal incident involving staff members of the facility, they say they're protected too. The law is written in a way that if someone is beaten to death in a mental hospital in this state, you will not find out who did it unless the police are involved and they charge him. And if there's negligence, if there's molestation, if there's drug abuse, all this stuff is shielded. It's astonishing. And so I did a column about it, and I got a letter from a family whose son had died in a mental institution up in the, they think that's where he died. They couldn't even get the information about where this kid died. All the state would tell them is the autopsy showed he had liver damage, period. And they were writing to me to find out how their son died. And I couldn't find out. I can't find out. And I directed them to the reporters that were working on it, and maybe they'll luck out and have a staff member talk. But isn't that astonishing in the 21st century? And imagine if it was your child, or your sister, or your brother, or your husband or wife, and you just got a call saying, sorry, they died. And that's all we can tell you. It's medieval. You feel helpless at a time like that, but on the other hand, you know, you think, what if you don't do the column? What if you don't stir this up a little bit? And this is the way we got to think. I think about everything we do is you just got to be a giant pain in the ass to these people, and hope and pray that the people who voted them into office will notice what's going on up there. That's all you can do. Thank you for having me. I'm not sure I enlightened this crusade anymore, but I'm happy to, if anyone wants to ask any questions or talk a little bit, that we can do that for a little bit too. I think we've got a couple more minutes. So, no, you're all as pessimistic and cynical as I am. Jesus Christ, don't do that. Yeah, hi. Yeah.
Well, I have a question that's not necessarily related to
Yeah.
the First Amendment rights, but seeing as you're down in the southern part of Florida and climate change and rising oceans is such an important issue, how optimistic are you, given your awareness of writing about this issue over the years, that our South Florida politicians, some of whom are running for president, will see the light?
No, I'm not optimistic. I mean, I don't live in Miami, that area anymore. I live up in Vero Beach. But I mean, I know what's going on, and I've been up on. There's no awareness or acknowledgement of, you know, we have a governor that won't let the words climate change be used in any official documents, communications, anything in the state of Florida. That's where we are. So no, you can't be optimistic. But what is happening is that more and more people are noticing when their blocks are underwater in the morning on a high tide in Miami Beach, and you have to use a skimboard to get to work, then you start to it's not a Democratic or Republican issue anymore. It's a holy shit issue. All of a sudden, that's what it is. Holy shit, we're going underwater. And you hate to see it get that far. The other, I mean, at some point it becomes almost like it's surreal to hear them talk about, well, we're not even sure there's climate change, or, you know, we're not even sure. And then you cut to the footage, or you cut to the photography, you know, here's we're underwater, or you go to the scientist. So they're in this great denial. And I don't know, again, what the answer is, except, in my case, to make fun of them, to ridicule them, to ruin their days, if possible. And have, my goal with some of these characters, honest to God, I'm not going to lie to you, is when when I went to the University of Florida, one of my professors was a great guy named Buddy Davis. And he was the editorial writer, Pulitzer Prize winning editorial writer for the Gainesville Sun. And he was the hardest professor probably I ever had there. But here's what he always said. He said, if you're going to write an editorial, you're going to write a column, you've got to pick a target. And you've got to isolate, okay, what happened, who did it, what can be done about it. You have to be specific. You have to really fire it right in there. And so my mission when I started, when I started the column back in the 80s in Miami, and we were doing 3 a week. Charlie Whitehead was doing 4, I was doing 3. But it was always just, okay, who's the target, and how do you put that spotlight on them? And it does, and you really, my mission was that morning for that person who did this thing, who violated the public trust in such a rotten way, to pick up the paper and as they're and literally gag on their Cheerios, because now that's where they are. They're in my column. And I just wanted to ruin their day and say, okay, you son of a bitch, here's what happened. Now, I'll tell you a true story. There was a Miami City commissioner, and I did a charity event. I made the mistake of going out in public, and I did a charity event with Dave Barry down there. And she came up to me. Her name was Rosario Kennedy. And she came up to me and she said, oh, I love your column, and I'm so glad you've never written a column about me. This is what she says at the charity. About 2 months later, she gets caught spending $115,000 redecorating her office in City Hall with all this designer stuff. And her nightmare came true. I couldn't wait. I said this, thank you, God. Does that make me a horrible person? No, but she was not an honest person. That was taxpayers' money in one of the poorest cities in the United States, the city of Miami. And here she's decorating her office. Tough luck. So when you have a clown who gets up and says there's no climate change, and you have a state with 1,200 miles of coastline, and the water's rising, and they look like a fool, in my case, I write about them like they're fools and hope that somebody out there gets the message. But you can't solve the problem. I mean, you can't, single-handedly do it. All you can do is keep at it, I think. Yes?
So traditional media is suffering the way
Right.
you are with finances. Do you have hope, some inspiration that we'll be able to monetize social media, any of the new media, to raise up writers like you?
Well, here's the good. I don't know. I'm not a business person. I don't know. I know the newspapers are struggling like hell. I also know that social media is very effective if you can use it and get it, because that's how especially young readers get their stuff. I don't know. I pick up my kid from high school. I don't see any of the kids sitting around with the Vero Beach newspaper on their lap, but I do see them like this. I do see them like this. So if you can get to them, and again, they're not getting, 8,000-word investigative exposés on their, they're digging in short bursts. They're getting, I don't know how you go after them, but that's what you've got to do. Now, the other thing I tell young writers, who want to be reporters, who want to be writers in general, who are depressed and, geez, I don't know if I want to be I don't want to know if I want to do this. Look at what's happening. And I always say, look, here's the other thing. The newspapers are one platform, but there's a lot of ways to get news to people, and there's a lot of websites, news websites now. And I said, look at the internet. The internet is nothing but written content, basically. Okay? Nothing. I'm not talking about the porn sites. I'm talking about, you hit Google, every word that comes up somebody sat there and keystroked that in and wrote it and had to write it, whether it's an ad for Nordstrom's or whether it's a 3,000-word blog about what happened at the Coral Gables City Council meeting last night. I mean, whatever it is, somebody's sitting there doing this. So that skill is necessary. That ability to put 2 sentences together, or 3 even in a row, that's all going to be necessary for future generations, because they're gobbling up content. They're devouring content. And if you can get the content that's important to them, global warming, even the movement in this country right now to suppress the rights of minorities to vote. Huge story. That sort of thing, when you're old enough to vote and you find out that you can't get registered, and then all of a sudden it's important to you. So There are ways to do it. So yes, I'm optimistic that people are, you know, my kid, my youngest, he can type a lot faster than I can type, and I've only been doing it for about 45 years, you know, but he's completely at ease. All his papers are done. I mean, so this is, and he's completely at ease reading in this way. So they're there if you can get to them. I think they're there, and I think they're future readers if you can get to them. Yes?
Looking at this poster and the path of sunshine, since Ruben asked you kind of launched it, and seeing that each governor has appreciated and respected the tradition, and then we get to where we are now, what's happened in perception, and how do we get this shift?
That's a hell of a good question. I don't know. I didn't, first of all, believe, naively, I didn't believe that he could get elected, given the baggage he had. I didn't, and then when he did, I have to say that my thought was, well, we deserve what we get now. I mean, I can't say that you can be shocked by any of this, given his history. I can't honestly say that I'm shocked and surprised about it. I don't know what, you know, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, really, when all this happened, we were the laughingstock of the country. Everyone said, they elected that dude? We're talking about the biggest Medicare fraud in the history of Medicare, and they elected that dude. Okay? When I was on book tours and talking to people, they just laugh. And they say, you got to have a lot of material now. And as a writer, you're saying, well, yeah, this is a gold mine for me. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. As a citizen, you're sick to your stomach, right? As a dad and a grandfather, I'm sick to my stomach about it. I don't know how, I don't know, but this is why one reason we're all here is that it's creeping this direction. I mean, he's, you know, he's just one figure, but there's a whole, you know, there's a whole rat's nest of these characters in Tallahassee who would shut every door to every reporter that's looking for every file, every piece of information that we take for granted. Yet, they'll turn around and they'll sell your driver's license information to Geico. Here, you might want to talk to these guys. I mean, this is the paradox. It's all for sale up there, everything. So that's the irony, is that, oh, we're trying to protect the privacy. Yeah, like hell you are. You're not trying to protect the privacy. Yeah.
You know, my answer to your question, I met Barbara Peterson a few years back, and I've been an advocate, and I'd like all the fine newspaper people in this room to come with me. The Sunshine Law passed with over 90% approval rate in the state of Florida. Only one problem, it didn't cover Tallahassee.
Yeah.
And I have been an advocate then, and I continue to be, and one day I hope I have enough stones gathered together to make it happen. I'm looking for 695,000 signatures in the state of Tallahassee has to follow the Sunshine Law, and they will be a little more, let's say, user-friendly to when we're trying to get our city councilman to do the right thing, or our county commissioner.
That would be, yeah.
I've pleaded with people in the legislature,
Yeah.
just help me in my county.
Right.
I can't watch you all the time.
Right.
I would like to be able to watch my guy down here. So let's put them under the Sunshine Law and call it a day. They won't like it.
No, they won't like it. And again, you would be a hero in my mind if you could get that done. I mean,
694,000.
That's a lot. We probably got time for one more. I think they've got stuff. You guys got to.
Carl, it's legislators who punch holes in sunshine laws. Over the course of time, have you found or do you sense that they're listening differently to the public or to the forces that are constantly on them in terms of how they act?
I think they're listening less, and I think part of it is that because it gets down to hometown journalism. The thing they fear the most, we were talking about it before the session, the thing they fear and dread the most, they don't really care, I have to say, if the Tallahassee Democrat busts their balls. I don't think they get that upset about it. But if they're going back to Gilchrist County, or they're going back to Naples, or they're going somewhere home, and their hometown paper has got a big editorial or a big series about something that they were doing in Tallahassee, that gets their attention. That they listen to. Because there is sort of this arrogance and the sense of immunity in Tallahassee to inspection. I mean, they know they're going to get pounded by the Herald and by the Times and by the other newspapers that have bureaus up there. They know that's going to happen. That what they fear is going home and having their local media now writing about this and singling them out. Because other than that, they just go home and go say, oh yeah, look what that terrible thing Tallahassee has done. Not many people read who voted for what. Not many people read that agate, you know, who cast their vote how. But I think you get their attention with good local hard-hitting reporting and saying, you know what, you're not off the hook on this. When you get home, there's going to be, these are your people, and they're going to be asking you questions why did you do this? Justify this. I mean, I know it's been somewhat effective with some of the NRA stuff. You know, these guys get a little bit embarrassed when you make fun of them for the, you know, wanting to put guns on college campuses. It's a great idea. I can't think of anything better than a keg party and a loaded semi-automatic. That's where I want my kid to go to college. But you do. Then that guy, I had a friend walk up to one of these knuckleheads at a party and say, hey, Matt, are you packing? And I said, did he laugh? He goes, no, he did not laugh. I mean, so you can get to them, but it's a long fight, and you got to keep swinging. Listen, you all are the heroes in this room, not me. Just keep it up, and I'll keep writing the columns as long as you keep kicking ass what you're doing. Thank you.